There's a lot of things I'm going to cover, and the first thing I want to talk about let's talk about the proportion and the pose first. And from there, we'll dive into the other things. Right now, there's a, if you just picture the underlying wireframe of the character, you have the head, try to think of it as 3D forms. And then you have, I guess, where the shoulder is. And it seems to be kind of going up like right here. So it kind of has a strange like shrug. It looks like he's kind of like shy and shrugging. It doesn't really align with the idea of a dwarf. I mean, maybe that's his character personality. That's perfectly fine, but let's just at least address it. So if here's the collarbones, and then there's the shoulder, here's the elbow, and there's the wrist. And if you just put, these basic 3D cylinders, you can kind of see how that's set up. And then it seems like there's the upper torso where the rib cage is, where you have the sternum kind of like this, making the rib cage do something like that. It might make sense because you're thinking of a dwarf character, smaller, compact, but we'll get into other things that I want to show that might improve this. And so then you have the hip area. We'll just draw that as a basic kind of upside down bowl with these holes inside. The knee here, and then I guess the ankle there. And put the little cylinders there for that too. And I would assume that that's reflected over this way. You can also imagine like a little joint there. And then there's the hand. I guess you didn't draw the other hand. However, first this looked like his hand was kind of reaching out, where this is his shoulder and then a bicep and then the forearm, and then his fist is like over here. And I thought he was holding something like that. Be careful with how you silhouette things. And if we had the spinal column, kind of something like that, a bit of gesture. And you can kind of eyeball where the other shoulder might be according to what this looks like. And I'd say that my first critique is that this pose feels a little awkward. What my suggestion for you to do is iterate a bunch of poses. And I'm going to show you how I would go about doing that so that you have an idea of what you can do as an exercise to have a further expanded exploration so that you can pick and choose what you actually like rather than just going with the first thing that we're seeing. And you might have done this already, but let me just go through it anyway. So let's just take a copy of that. But as you recall, I specified the geometric shapes of these areas. You got the cylinders for the arm, the big almost sphere that encompasses the rib cage, so on and so forth. And we can take those same elements and push and pull them in different ways. So if we kind of move over here and maybe start with the rib cage, and we'll keep it at first similar to the one you have. But what if the head was a little higher so it doesn't look like he's shrugging? And then maybe the shoulders, instead of being so up and almost like digging into his face, you can push them outward. And now what if we put that shoulder over here? And it's definitely more stylized this way, but that's the point of exploring these limitations and pushing the limitations and seeing what you're capable of coming up with. And before I put the arms in, I want to put the rest of the body in first. So let's go ahead and put that spine in, and then we put the hip. Now the hip, we can make that much higher, much lower, so that they're really small stubby legs down here. The combinations are literally endless. Let's see what happens if we make the hip area higher, like maybe up to that. And then what if we took these ball joints and pushed them further out? And so now we're introducing a completely new proportion. And I would say do like a whole bunch of these and then use that as a sort of mannequin to put your actual designs on. And so from here, let's keep it the same height. Put the knee there and the ankle here. Maybe the foot goes there. You got these stubby legs, but we'll make them thicker and wider to accommodate for the fact that we push the legs further out. And seeing how this elbow is so incredibly high, again, it looks like he's kind of pushing his own shoulder into his head in a very awkward and uncomfortable way. So instead of it being way up here, what happens if we bring that further down? So again, that's too high up. What if we took that and brought it down further like this? And then we brought the other elbow down here, and maybe the forearm in this case, we could just make that really low. Now again, I'm probably pushing outside the stylization that you're looking for initially, but I want to explore the possibilities. And the cool thing about this process is if you have these on all different layers, you could move these parts around and really come up with the design that you want. You could add those shoulder blades, not shoulder blades, the shoulder muscles, the trapezius. And now he looks more like a buff kind of character here. with the proportions and height compared to other characters, you could still make him seem like a dwarf. So if you have just a regular, let's say elf character standing up tall like this, just excuse the rough scribble of it, but you know, it'll still seem like a dwarf, even though by pushing those proportions in an isolated manner, seemed like it went away from that dwarf feeling, but now we have context. And so my assignment, if you were my student in class, would be to say, do 30 of these, 40, do 100. See what kind of combinations you can come up with in terms of different proportions, pushing and pulling, moving the head way lower, way higher. There's so many things you can do. And you as a designer, you're a production designer of your own little project. That's what we are as artists. So you have the choice to say, what can I do to push and pull the parameters to kind of explore the possibilities? This is how. So I'll do a couple more.